Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to the weekly meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Utah Transit Authority on today, Wednesday, April the 10th. We'd acknowledge that today is National Siblings Day, and if my family were here, they would acclaim how wonderful it is to be related to me, and maybe. But we certainly are grateful to those of you who are participating today. Let's get started, and if you would stand and join me in repeating the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with our Safety First minute with Sheldon Shaw.
Morning, Chairman, trustees. Appreciate the opportunity to give the safety minute as always. So what I want to highlight for today is that April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month, and that's a big deal. If we take a look back for 2017, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says there were just over 3,000 fatalities that were due to distracted driving. And then as far as distracted pedestrians, the Governor's Highway Safety Association says that 2018 we're going to have a 30-year high for number of pedestrians that were killed, and that's over 6,000. And one of the main reasons for that is the use of cell phones. Since 2008, the use of cell phones is up over 4,000% for pedestrians and for drivers of vehicles. And so all of us should set the example. Put your cell phones down while you're in our system or while you're operating your vehicles, and pay attention to what you're doing. So thanks.
Good reminder.
Text that out to our friends.
Not while you're driving or walking around our system.
Yeah, good reminder and good counsel. Thanks, Sheldon. We'll next go to our public comment period. Bob, do we have any comments?
We do not have any public comment today.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Next, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 27th. Do I have a motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Well, next, go to our agency report with Steve Meyer. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. A couple items this morning. I want to introduce our legal counsel from the Attorney General's office. As we've been working through the transition of SB 136, we basically set up April 8th as the transition date where the AG's office would take over full responsibility for our legal needs. And Mark Burns and David Wilkins are here. David's been in our office for several months now, and Mark is the Assistant Attorney General with responsibility over UTA. So we welcome them on board, and looking forward to working with them on our legal needs.
Do we want to take a second? Mark, do you want to just tell us a little bit about where your background and assignments and?
Sure. My name's Mark Burns. I've been with the Attorney General's office since 1995. I've had responsibilities representing state agencies everywhere from UDOT to the State Division of Unclaimed Property, Auditor, Treasurer, State Rules. My current assignment is as a Division Director of what's known as the Highways and Utilities Division. Our group represents the Department of Public Safety, UDOT, and the utility regulators in the state, and all the lawyers that advise those different state departments. I'm looking forward to representing UTA. It's a very interesting, progressive organization. A lot of outside-the-box thinking and a lot of legal issues come along with that, and I'm happy to provide support for that. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Sure. Thank you. And
Thanks.
We'll try to keep you busy.
Actually, we'll try not to make you busy,
I don't know that would be the problem.
unless it's productive. But we'll look forward to working with you. Thanks, Steve.
I'd like to also report a little bit on our CAT committee, our Committee for Accessible Transportation. That's made up with people with varying types of disabilities that give and addressing the accessibility challenges that they face as they access our transit system. And it's a great committee, and our Charissa with our civil rights group leads that up, and we put more responsibility. We've changed the format for that committee. They meet now quarterly. They have some subcommittees that meet on a more regular basis, and they really are working hard to give us feedback on our system and test things out. So, for example, this last meeting this week, Trustee Holbrook and you, Chair, were there for part of the meeting, but they talked about UVX. We took them down and give them a ride on the system there, and they got to check out the platforms and access with the center of street stations there. And they really liked the stop announcements, and the mid-block ped buttons were really helped make it accessible. They've had some issues. Well, we had an operator make some comments about Murray Central, the transfer, getting across the train tracks over to the front runner station, and they've been working with our team trying to find some good solutions to that. They also handed out some awards to some of our operators and one of the riders for their good work, and it's great that they're recognizing our employees for their good work in the Salt Lake Business Unit, Front Runner, and on the Baylor Transit side. And so it's a very, very good, active committee of citizens that really care about accessibility for UTA, and we really appreciate their feedback and their participation.
I caught the tail end of it, but it was fascinating to have them bring up things I just never would have thought about, including how do you find a bus stop if you're sight impaired or blind, and the fact that Google puts you within 40 feet, which for most of us works, but if you can't see the sign, what challenge of that presents. And so, I applaud the staff that's working with them, and certainly they brought some good perspectives to the discussion.
So we discussed the upcoming $500,000 project at 4 South in Maine, and they really had some great comments about how are we going to educate the public about the detours and the different phases. It's going to have multiple phases of work and multiple types of detours to get around that, and gave us some ideas that we need to go back and work on. So, very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions for Steve at this point? Okay. All right. Thanks for that report. First item up for action on our agenda outside of the minutes is a resolution approving international travel to the American Public Transportation Association 2019 International Rail Rodeo. Eddie? I assume this is an outcome of the local competition that we had a couple months ago, and on a Saturday, if I remember right.
So this will be a different rodeo. It hasn't taken place yet. It'll be scheduled within the next couple of weeks. But once that we have our local rodeo, then we'll identify who the winners are, and then they will go on to APTA, to the international competition. So I'm here this morning seeking approval to send 11 employees to Toronto, Canada to attend the APTA conference and rail rodeo. The current resolution states 9, so this request will require an amendment. The event is scheduled for June 21st through June 23rd. We're proposing to send 5 bargaining unit employees and 6 administrative employees. And to provide a little insight, just to kind of give you an idea of what the rail rodeo is all about, that's a big part of this request. We have a short video. Maybe. Yeah. And this video was filmed at the 2017 Rail Rodeo. There we go. It's a great video. Just not coming through.
Yeah.
Well,
Give us the narration.
I wasn't
here.
prepared to do the play-by-play. But actually, this is for operations and the maintenance side. For our employees, they go in, and it goes through just different competitions, whether it's from the operations side or the maintenance side. A lot of times on the maintenance side, they will, plant a bug in the system. They'll have to troubleshoot, diagnose, figure out what the problem is. This is really a great opportunity for both our operators and our maintenance employees. Participation in the rodeo makes employees better through competing against the best in the business. There are generally about 20 different properties that participate in this type of event from all across the United States as well as Canada. And so it's a great opportunity for our folks to compete against them. Also, there's always that opportunity to learn best practices, networking with other professionals in the industries. And it also, just through preparation allows our employees to hone their skills and just get better at what they do every day. UTA has been competing in this competition since 2015. And we are the defending overall team champions. This is our last year was our second time to win this competition. We also won at the 2015 APTA Rail Rodeo Conference that was held here in Salt Lake. Toronto is considered international travel, and that requires board approval. So I'm requesting to send 11 employees to the APTA Conference and Rail Rodeo, Toronto, Canada, June 21st through the 23rd, 2019.
So Eddie, and I know the answer to this, but just for the record, I get it's not always in Toronto. I assume it's just the rotation in this system of hosting locations.
It is. If you look at the last 4 years, 2015 was here in Salt Lake, 2016 was in Phoenix, 2017 was in Baltimore, and 2018 was in Denver. And so it's just part of the rotation now that it would be in Toronto, Canada.
And it doesn't necessarily cost that much more to go to Toronto than it does New York or Washington.
No, it's about the same price. Toronto, airfare to Toronto is about the same as it is to DC or New York.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions, though?
Eddie, I had a quick question. So how do we determine who attends? Do we have a competition internally first? Is that right?
We do. We'll have an internal competition. Like I said, I don't remember the date that it's scheduled internally. I'll get that to the board and the executives to put out. But it's always a fun event. I think some of you attended the local bus rodeo, and so it'll be something very, very similar to that. But yeah, it'll be within the next couple of weeks. And we have a local competition. They'll go through all the same standards, all the same types of competitions. We will pick our winners, and then those winners will go on to compete at the international level.
Did those from the bus rodeo, do they go on anywhere?
They do. There's another APTA bus rodeo and conference that'll be held later in the year.
Okay. That's probably what I was thinking about.
Yeah, it's a great event.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion on approving of this resolution with the acknowledgement of the number of employees to 11.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the international travel to the American Public Transportation Association's 2019 International Rail Rodeo in Toronto, R 2019-04-01, and amending that to 11 total employees attending.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Trustee Millington.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Eddie. we'll
I think I'm next.
cross our fingers and
wish them good luck.
Wish them good luck. So, our next item up is also yours, Eddie, approving the execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement with Salt Lake County to perform a transit alternative analysis in the Point of the Mountain area.
Thank you. Once again, requesting approval of an interlocal agreement with Salt Lake County to perform a transit alternatives analysis at the Point of the Mountain area. If approved, Salt Lake County would provide $400,000 to help fund this analysis. I have Mary Delaretto with me here today, who will provide some additional information on this project. You're on.
Okay, so we did present to the advisory board a couple months ago about this project, so we want to give you a little background and then we'll talk about the resolution a little more. So as part of the Point of the Mountain Commission's study for their visioning study, they came up with a preferred scenario, which included a lot of transportation options in it. And so MAG and UDOT and Wasatch UTA did a separate transportation analysis that focused on several of those transportation options. One of them being the extension of the Blue Line down to Lehigh. Let me show you the map first. So this shows the alternative. What was in the study was that pink line starting at the Sandy Station and then going through the Point of the Mountain area, the blue hatched. Well, it would go west of the commuter rail line and then stop at the Draper Station and then go through the Point of the Mountain area and then back onto the UTA owned right-of-way. Another option that was looked at was going straight down the UTA right-of-way, to the end of the line at the Draper Station and then extending all the way down along the right-of-way down to Lehigh. There was a lot of debate over which one made the most sense, and so we decided what to do was an alternatives analysis to look at those two lines. So the alternatives analysis will be a detailed study of each of the alignments, and we'll also look at different modes. We won't just look at light rail, and it'll compare the ridership and the travel markets on each of those alignments, look at travel time, also land use and economic development potential, especially for the Point of the Mountain area. And it'll do some conceptual engineering so we get a better idea of costs for the project. It'll include extensive public and stakeholder involvement, and we anticipate about a year for that to happen. The outcomes of that AA study is a locally preferred alternative that would be adopted by the MPOs, the local municipalities that are affected, and then by UTA, both the advisory council and then the board here. It'll also give us a better understanding of what the costs are and the risks are of the alignments. And it'll help streamline the NEPA or the environmental process when we get to that point, because we'll have already done the purpose and need and the alternatives analysis portion of that. And then it'll also help us identify how competitive we would be for federal funding and if that's the way we want to go. So the funding partners, Salt Lake County has, as part of the, what was that called? As part of the Salt Lake County, Carlton, you probably know the name.
Fourth quarter.
Yeah, I was just having fun watching you figure it out.
The regional, the Choice Fund.
Yeah, it is the I think Transportation Choice Fund,
right? So it's part of that.
It came from their fourth quarter dollars that they got in the entirety.
So Draper actually submitted an application for that in conjunction with Sandy and South Jordan, and they were awarded $400,000. And what they would do, they would like us to, since we're going to be managing that project, they would like to transfer the funds over to us. So we met with Salt Lake County and Draper City, and they were happy to do that transfer. So we're doing an interlocal agreement, and that's what the resolution is for today, to approve that interlocal agreement to transfer that $400,000 to UTA to manage. It would be in an escrow account, and as the costs got incurred, we would draw down from that escrow account. So for the alternatives analysis, we're thinking it's going to be about $800,000 based on our independent cost estimate. And UDOT has committed to 50,000. UTA has committed in our budget 50,000, and then Wasatch Front and MAG have each committed 25,000. So we still are a little bit short of the 800,000 that we need for the alternatives analysis. But we can phase the procurement. So we do want to go out as soon as possible with that procurement. And there's going to be 6 tasks, and we could give, if we don't have the funding, all of the funding by the time we award it, we can just give a notice to proceed for the first 4 tasks. And then as we get the additional funds, we can complete the project. Let's see. So we do have other potential sources, or we think that Silicon Slopes has expressed an interest in helping fund this, and also the legislature in the past has expressed interest. So we're hoping to get that additional funding soon to complete that. That might be the, okay. So the resolution for today is for the approval of that interlocal agreement to transfer that 400,000. We are also doing a separate memorandum of agreement with UTA, UDOT, Wasatch Front, and MAG for their contributions, and Draper is actually going to be a party to that agreement as well to make sure the funds, the 400,000, will be used to do the AA, and that they will have involvement in the selection and things like that. So I think that's it.
Mary, first of all, I would just more for the record, while the application process began when I was a director, I left to come to UTA before anything was awarded, and there was a separate body that evaluated those proposals, and I just wasn't even part of any of that. So the actual awarding to UTA, I just want to make sure that it's clear that I didn't really have any role in that award. But I also wanted to ask the question, and it was probably in one of your early slides, but sort of ridership potential, and I assume that will sort of help educate us as to the mode of transportation that would be recommended. Is that right? Is that part of that analysis?
Yes, we're going to look at modes and alignments and look at ridership potential on both alignments with different modes.
Okay, sorry. Other questions?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Beth.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, why don't we start with Kent, and then we'll come to Beth.
I have a question on the escrow agreement.
Okay.
Page 5 of the escrow agreement references Mayor Ben McAdams.
Oh, does it?
Yes, it does. I can't approve this if it references Mayor Ben McAdams, dated 2019, when he was no longer mayor and was representative in the U.S. House.
Oh, sorry.
So page 5 of the escrow agreement needs to be changed before I can approve this, because it references the wrong mayor.
Yeah, we copied from the Sugar House one. That's why it didn't get taken out.
That needs to be changed. It is dated 2019,
Right.
and I think the county's attorney has signed it as of March 13, 2019, which significantly postdates Ben McAdams not being around as mayor.
So I believe the county is taking it next week to their council.
The piece that I had,
So he's already signed.
piece
the
that I had
attorney has
shows
already
signature
signed.
date, and it was dated March 13, 2019. And then it references Mayor Ben McAdams, so that's a mistake.
Okay,
That needs to be corrected.
okay.
I guess the question, can we amend this agreement here, or do we need to wait till we have something?
I would approve it if it's amended to say that page 5 is going to be changed to reflect Mayor Jenny Wilson as opposed to Mayor Ben McAdams.
Okay,
We could make that change.
okay. I'm just looking at Mark too. Do you see any?
Sorry.
Do you see any concern with that?
You can certainly provide a conditional approval with a change. There's no problem at all with that.
All right.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, no, great catch. Yeah.
Page 5.
Okay. Beth, you had a question as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had some questions more along the lines of, can you kind of give us just a brief, like, the alternatives analysis, why there were two choices, what the thoughts were behind that, just a brief analysis.
So the Envision Utah study, which looked at, which developed the preferred scenario, liked the western alignment, which did not go on our right-of-way because they thought it would be a faster travel time and better ridership. We're not sure if that's the case, and going along our right-of-way we think would be a lot less expensive because we already own that right-of-way. So there were pluses and minuses of both, so we thought the best way to help decide which one would be the preferred would be to do this in, more in-depth analysis and look at a number of factors.
Thank you. That was my question.
Any other questions though on this particular one?
No.
I'll entertain a motion, and I'm wondering, Ken, do you want to?
I will make this motion and try to capture my complaint. I move that we conditionally approve R 2019-04-02, approving the execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement with Salt Lake County to perform a transit alternative analysis in the Point of the Mountain area, with the change reflected on page 5 of the escrow agreement to reflect the current mayor of Salt Lake County.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion to that motion? This will be a helpful study. We have a lot of suggestions about what could happen there, and they all entail, hundreds of millions of dollars potentially. And so I think to get a good sound analysis of this, of what the right way to do it is going to be helpful as we go forward. So looking forward to the outcome of the work. With that motion in a second, we'll ask for a roll call vote.
Trustee Millington.
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Eddie. Our next item up is a resolution authorizing property right-of-way acquisition for the Provo-Orem BRT, and we have Paul Drake to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, trustees. Paul Drake, Senior Manager of Real Estate and Transit-Oriented Development. We are still finishing up the final acquisitions for the Provo-Orem BRT, or the UVX. We're down to the last 10 that are the most complicated, one of which is this parcel 143B, which recently received FTA approval for a proposed administrative settlement. We're bringing it to the board for final review and approval. As you can see from this slide, it's located at 200 East and University Parkway in Orem. We've negotiated a portion for a temporary construction easement, which is shown in the green, and then a fee acquisition that's shown in the red. The seller for the property is Garf Properties. We're purchasing about 4,900 square feet of property in fee and 6,800 square feet of a temporary construction easement. There was a large discrepancy, as you can see, between the two appraised values. UTA's appraisal came in at just over $180,000. The owner had their own appraisal came in over $340,000. The difference of that is about $161,000. We'll go into a little bit of the reasons for that discrepancy and how we came to our conclusion. But after the adjustments during the negotiation, the parties settled for a final purchase price of $292,598, which is a settlement of about $111,000. This was a mediated settlement through the Ombudsman's office. Part of the increase was just the appreciation between when UTA received our appraisal and the final purchase, but the bulk was due to additional costs that were incurred by the property owner. At the time, they were doing some improvements to their property, and because we were coming in with our project, that added additional cost to theirs. You can see the list of the things that were additional costs to the property owner. parking light relocation, some earthwork, and some additional asphalt. Plus, it was determined by the group that if the property did go to condemnation, there would be significant costs associated with that, and it wasn't likely to change the ultimate outcome. So both the project team and FTA believe that this was a fair settlement, and we request that the board approve the purchase as described and approve the right-of-way and authorize the executive director to execute the transaction. Any questions?
Beth?
I just had a quick question. If you could clarify, could you go back to, I think it's to, the question I had is on the interest purchased for the easement portion of that, what does that equate to in terms of a dollar figure, or is that separated at all? And are we just buying the actual red portion of your map? And how does that work in terms of the overall cost?
Sure. It ultimately the costs are just kind of lumped together when we finalize the negotiation. So it's hard to separate what costs are what. It reminded me of your second question. I'm sorry.
So I just wanted to understand what the cost of for just the easement portion of that versus the cost of the actual permanent property acquisition, and what that difference is on that $282,000 figure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know exactly what the difference is in the split. It's hard to split that out. But just logically, the temporary construction easement per square footage is going to be significantly less than a fee take.
Right.
But I don't think that we could probably give you a clear answer. What's the difference? Because it is just a negotiated bulk settlement.
Okay.
Apologize.
Well, what does that do to the budget? How much of that was anticipated, and does it put you over? I mean, obviously, you know, I can see how they got to the price. I'm just wondering what that does to the project.
I believe we'll still be within the budget, okay. The overall budget. There's contingency that's allowed within the budget. We know that it's going to go up over time.
Yeah, the project team had looked at these, the remaining work to be done, cost to complete estimates, and they had known that some of these were still in negotiation. So what happens with this when the project gets laid out? We had set up the design. We'd known the areas of impacts. We'd worked with the property owners to get what's called a right of entry that allows us to get in and do the work while we're still discussing the price. Everybody's desire would be to get the price settled and get it done up front. We don't always get there with differences like we talked about on this property. The impact of that construction easement, you know, with a car dealership, you can imagine you've got to move your cars off the lot, less visibility. They were, as Paul mentioned, in the process of construction on the site, doing some upgrades to their site. They had to hold off on some of that construction, redesign some of it. As you can imagine, by moving this back, it impacted their on-site drainage as well as the layout of their operations. So, you know, quite a bit of impact and an evolving type discussion about what the total amount of those impacts are. So you pay a fee for that construction access, that construction easement that allows the contractor to get in and safely work without doing any more damage, and you kind of set up the limits for that. And then the fee portion of that, that's actual what we need to acquire to move the street back and get the sidewalk and that. So as the team's looking at that, they know that that's ongoing. We know there's some discussion, so they think, you know, as they looked at the remaining costs for real estate, they padded that up. We can come back to you. We probably need to come back to you at this point with the project and just give you an update of where we're at.
Yeah, I realize we're kind of at a point where it is where it is. And
yeah, but we want to be within our budget.
But we want to just have a sense.
And that's our intent. So we do have the contingency. We had seen some cost savings in some other areas of the project. So we'll bring that back to you in detail next week in my agency report.
That'd be great.
Yep, definitely.
Any other questions from the board? If none, I'll entertain a motion on this particular resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the R 2019-04-03, authorizing the property right of way for the Provo Orem BRT as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Trustee Millington.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Next up, and I think you're the next one up, is contracts and procurement. This is a indemnification agreement in regards to the Sandy Towers East.
Absolutely. Thank you again. This agreement is in conjunction with some master plan improvements that are going on at Sandy Civic Center, TOD. There are 2 canals running through that site. One has been buried under the new beet digger. Our development partners are now boxing and burying the second one. This one's located up near State Street, and the work is being completed just north of Seagull Lily and east of State Street. This agreement is in conjunction with a surety bond, guaranteeing that the work is completed to Salt Lake's satisfaction. They're the ones that are that own and operate that canal. The exhibit to what was included in the packet, it's entitled General Agreement of Indemnity. It's signed by both UTA and the development entity, the managers of the development entity at the insistence of Salt Lake City. The main agreement in the packet that's entitled Indemnification Agreement is an agreement between UTA and the joint venture, which transfers all the obligations from UTA to the joint venture. So UTA ultimately has none of the liability other than its portion in the joint venture. The risk to UTA is very minimal if there is a problem. So again, this is covering the construction of that canal box. If there is a problem with that construction through the end of the year, which is the expected term of this agreement, the contractor's 1-year warranty will cover that. They'll have to go in there and make the repairs. After that, all the liability shifts to Sandy Towers as part of just the normal maintenance of the canal. Any questions?
I assume, based on my prior life on the city council, that this is in a road parking lot or roadway or some place where it's accessible. Nobody's building over it, I'm hoping.
That's right. We can't build over the box. It's we've done some preliminary designs for the next phase of office, which is where this will be, and it is under just one swath of surface parking.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Let's see. If there aren't, I would entertain a motion on this particular contract.
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we approve this indemnification agreement with Sandy Towers East as proposed.
A second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Point of order. We need a roll call.
Excuse me. Sorry. Thank you. One day I'll get this straight. So, a roll call.
Trustee Millington.
Aye.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Next up is for legal services. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. We've had a contract in place for outside legal services, and it's created what you might call an on-call pool of attorneys with different levels of expertise in different areas that we can call upon if we have specific needs outside of our staff's expertise. We would like to extend that contract for an additional year, up to an additional year. We need to go ahead and do a re-procurement and reestablish this pool. We will work with the AG's office and talk about what kind of needs we might have in those areas of specialty and get that reestablished. But in this period between the existing contract and the new contracts, we'd like to extend the existing contracts for a period of time.
And I see something that says 24 law firms. Is that how many
Mhm.
extensions that we're contemplating? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to keep them all on consistent,
Yeah.
keep the whole pool on board.
Are there any other law firms in Salt Lake?
It's amazing that there are, yes.
Wow.
Some of these are national firms as well.
I see. With some specialty. I'm just kidding. Other questions, however?
No.
All right. If there are none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of this contract. Or I guess it's really more of a
Change order.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the change order requested for legal services as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Trustee Millington,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next up is pre-procurement.
So as you heard earlier today, we are going to go out for the Point of the Mountain alternative analysis. We'll go out for requests for proposals for consulting firms to do that work. And has been our practice, we'd notify you in advance that procurement is going to go out shortly, and we'd be back to you as we bring that contract to you.
Any questions for Steve on that? Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Actually, my apologies. I do have one
please.
question. I know that we'd had the discussion, so we're still put the total contract value at $800,000, even though we don't have the full funding in place.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's standard, but I just wanted you to.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, thank you for that. We'd scope the entire project. We'd let the proposers know that we don't have all the funding at this time, and we'd break down the scope into the different segments based on the funding that we have now. We'd issue a notice to proceed for what we do have funding if we don't get the total funding by the time the contract's awarded. But that allows us to break it up and allow us to notify the consultants that, hey, there could be a chance that we don't get all the funding and we just proceed with the first phase. We fully intend to get all the funding, but be able to scope it such that we could authorize them to get started right away.
When funding comes back, what's the process? You then go, is it more like a change order to the contract based on the original bid?
Correct.
Okay. Not that this would be the case, but say you got through the sort of first phase and you decided you didn't like the work they're doing, can you cut them loose? And
we can. We always have options to monitor the quality of their work and their performance as we go along.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. I see no other business unless I've missed anything, and make note of our next meeting on April 17th. Ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.